Hello everyone, my name is Frederico and I will be presenting the paper Short-Term Predictions of COVID-19 Deaths in Argentina by Frederico Pelogia, Vitor Soares and Henrique Paiva for the Latin American Congress in Biomedical Engineering 2022. So starting with the background of this research, as we know, in the last 2 years the world has been suffering from the COVID-19 disease, which is caused by the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus. And it was declared as a global pandemic on March 2020 by the World Health Organization, and it's causing health, social and economic impact in several countries around the world. Some common symptoms of this disease are fever, coughing, shortness of breath, diarrhea and nausea. And some safety measures recommended by the World Health Organization are social distancing, the use of masks and hand and surfaces sanitizing. And also, following the immunization schedules is of great importance to avoid the more severe cases of this disease. In this context, mathematical modeling is an important tool to fight the pandemic, because by describing the pandemic indicators, you can monitor the severity of the pandemic in a given region, and this can help the decision-making process of authorities and local governments. Where the main goal is to avoid overwhelming the healthcare system. And to the COVID-19 specifically, several modeling approaches have been taken, like for example, comportamental models that are based on the classic SIR model, complex networks approaches, AI, artificial intelligence, and growth models. For this work specifically, we selected data from 3 of the most populous cities in Argentina, who are Buenos Aires, Rosario, and Mendoza, and data for the indicator of cumulative and daily number of deaths by COVID-19. And we extracted this data from the Google COVID-19 Open Data dataset, which collects the data from the official sources, but it provides a more suitable structuring for practical use. In order to do this, we use a growth model capable of representing multiple epidemiological waves. So in this slide we have the ODE that characterizes Richard's growth model, with DFT being the number of deaths from the first to the 10th day of the pandemic. And the solution to this ODE is known, which is this DFT expression, which we use to model the accumulated indicator. And this closed form can be also, we can derive it with respect of time and obtain this expression that will model the daily version of the indicator. So the graph of the function DFT is the sigmoid curve, and its derivative has this bell-shaped curve. In the ODE, we had the term 1 over delta n, which is an intrinsic growth rate. And we also have in this model the parameter nu that controls the asymmetry of these curves. In our context, this means that we can represent different magnitudes of acceleration and deceleration phases for the number of deaths. The parameter A may be interpreted as the final number of deaths because it is this final value, this saturation value of the model. And the parameter TP is the turning point, is the moment in which the number of deaths stops to increase and starts to decrease. And in order to represent the multiple wave behavior of the pandemic, we use a model that consists of a sum of n Richard sigmoids, 1 for each epidemiological wave. And specifically in this work, we focused on the 3 first epidemiological waves of each city. So here's the formulation of the optimization problem that we used in the fitting process. The objective function to be minimized is the mean squared error between the model and the data, subject to these constraints, the parameters being greater than 0. And to computationally solve this problem, we use the sequential least squares programming method. For the fitting process, we use this 2-step procedure for each function added to the model. So first we optimize with nu equals 1, which will force the sigmoid to be symmetric. And then we optimize with nu being freely adjusted. So the sigmoid may be asymmetrical. And in this second step, we use the optimal point from step 1 as the initial point. And we fit the model using the accumulated data until a certain date, and we apply the optimal parameters, the 4 parameters of each sigmoid, to the daily version of the model, which is the derivative of d of t, and we evaluate the predictions of the model for the next 14 days after the last date used in the fitting process. So here we have the results for the cities of Buenos Aires, Rosario, and Mendoza. The model is represented in red, the real data in gray, and to the right of these dotted lines we have the short-term predictions for 14 days. In general, we can see that the model fit is really good. It is being capable of representing the trend in the daily number of deaths, and in most cases the short-term predictions were also good. So in more quantitative terms, here is the relative root mean squared error. For Buenos Aires it was 0.31%, for Rosario 0.24%, and for Mendoza 0.20%. And here we have a table with the optimal parameters of the sigmoids for each city. So as we saw in the results, we had a good fitting of the model, representing the general trend of the daily indicator, and also the multiple wave behavior was successfully represented. About the short-term predictions, this specific case, the first wave in Rosario, the model predicted a less steeper decrease for the first week, but in most cases the predictions were really good also. So to conclude, we may say that this work brought forth an efficient model for predicting the daily number of deaths in Argentina in short term, because 3 of the most populous cities were analyzed, and this is especially good because the model has a low complexity. It only has 1 sigmoid per wave, with 4 parameters per sigmoid, and the limitation of this work is the lack of correspondence between the model parameters and the epidemiological parameters, since the main form of contribution are the predictions themselves. So in this kind of modeling, we also need to consider the impact of some outer factors, like for example the appearance of new variants of the virus, and also the evolution of the vaccination coverage. And the development of reliable tools for monitoring pandemics and the spread of diseases is extensible and non-specific, and therefore this kind of work can be applied in the future to study, to model the spread of other infectious diseases, and be useful even after the current pandemic comes to an end. So here are the references for this presentation. So thank you very much for your attention, and here is my email, and please feel free to ask us any questions about this work.